welcome back to the Conscious Consultant Hour, Awakening Humanity. We're talking this hour in studio with my guest, Ralph White, one of the co-founders of the Open Center. So Ralph, at the time and I really want our audience to understand, and one of the things about your book, The Jeweled Highway, that really kind of struck me about you that I hadn't really realized before is that you've done a lot of hard labor and work. Like, work is you're no stranger to working hard, are you?
No, you definitely don't do something like the Open Center without putting in years of commitment and intense work.
Yeah, absolutely. And over the years, I mean, as you said, like first this initial sort of opening or vision that you had that opened you up, and it was you went afterwards and you were selling like a magazine door to door and things like that, and you did a lot of other manual labor and you had other jobs along the way. Did you ever have a hard time kind of reconciling sort of this spiritual path that you started walking with the mundane and your day-to-day life?
Well, I mean, it was important to me in writing the book, The Jeweled Highway, that I didn't present my life as just a carpet that just rolled out easily from Findhorn to Omega to the Open Center to the global network of holistic centers. It wasn't that way. There were plenty of times of doubt, of confusion, of concern, plenty of times of having no money, of wondering whether I was really on the path or not. And I feel that when I talk to people today who read the book, especially young people, I think it's really valuable for people to see once you make a decision to step onto a spiritual path, it's not as if life is going to be a breeze. You will inevitably have your struggles along the way. And you just have to hang in there and retain a certain faith in your inner vision and the values that you are committed to. And of course, you broaden your life experience. I mean, like me, whether you're picking pears in the Hood River Valley of Oregon with Mexican migrant laborers or whatever it is that you're doing, you learn from these experiences. It broadens your attunement to humanity. But yeah, there were plenty of difficult times, and I think it's important that people realize that.
Yeah, absolutely. Because I think it really is this kind of misconception that a lot of people have, that it's like, oh, well, I started on this spiritual path, and like, shouldn't life be better for me? But I still have all these struggles and all these problems. And it's like, yeah, and that's part of the path too, isn't it?
No, it's definitely part of the path. Yeah.
Okay. Since we mentioned it, so let's talk about it a little bit. First of all, where did you come up with the name The Jeweled Highway?
Well, I was actually sitting in a local bar in Long Island City, actually. And I had come
What better place?
Exactly, that's where I live. And I had come up with various names. They felt too dry. And I wanted something imagistic. And so I can actually recall downing a pint of Pilsner Lager in a place called the Alabar on Vernon Boulevard in Long Island City. And it just came to me out of the blue. The phrase just arrived, and of course the first thing I did was Google it, see if somebody else used this. Nobody else had strung those three words together before, so I thought, wonderful. This is it.
Beautiful. Yeah. I kind of like it because it does bring up that imagery of, like, there are a lot of jewels, there's a lot of precious moments that you find along the way, but it's not just a road, it's not just a path, it's actually a highway.
Yeah, that's right.
Which is that imagery of, like it's something a little bit larger or more developed in a way.
Yeah, that's right. And there are plenty of roadblocks.
Detours and construction.
Yes, I love that cover, which shows a beautiful path through the forest. The only thing is it's a little more linear than my life has actually been. There have definitely been a fair number of curves and brick walls and, detours, etc.
Absolutely.
I wanted to convey the jewel-like moments, the moments of awakening consciousness, expansion. But of course, I wanted to indicate that it wasn't one non-stop jewel. There were plenty of periods in between those different jewel-like moments of awakening.
Right. Yeah. So just a quick shout out. I'm just looking on our system. Just a big thank you to our listeners from around the world, including such wonderful places as Brazil, Indonesia, Korea.
Wow.
and Japan. So thank you all for tuning, as well as the United States, of course. Yeah. And just to remind people, we now have our live stream running up on Facebook. If you want to see the video of me talking to Ralph, well, mostly you're going to see Ralph because he's a character full of a man full of character. Excuse me. So he's more interesting than I am. One of those jewels along the way you just briefly mentioned was Findhorn, and I remember hearing about Findhorn back in the late 70s, early 80s, and it just the stories about it and the people there, and it just sounded like such a magical place. And I have not yet made it there, but you were there, and I guess I don't know. Is that considered the early days?
Well, I was there in the mid to late 70s, 76 to 79. I think it was a kind of a golden age at Findhorn. It was, for people who are not familiar with it, it's an alternative spiritual community in the north of Scotland, about 25 miles east of Inverness. Today, it's an eco-village and an international center of holistic learning. But it began in the early 60s with just 3 broke people living in a windswept trailer park. But then one of the founders of it, this woman, Eileen Caddy, who had a real meditative gift, she received an inner vision, should we say, of Findhorn becoming a center of light, and that ultimately it would become one point of a global network of light. And now that seemed a real stretch for 3 broke people in an unglamorous part of Scotland in 1962. But in fact, that's what happened. It did become really, when I got, since David Spangler got there, I would say in 1970 or so, it began to become more than just a small group of British esotericists and meditators, and it began to become more vital. So when I was there, it was young British American, mostly people from maybe 20 or 25 different countries, all working to create goal was to create a center of demonstration, so that we could actually demonstrate that you could really live in harmony with nature and, broadly speaking, in harmony with each other. So that's what attracted to me. It wasn't really about gurus or any prescribed spiritual path. It was about demonstrating that we can live together in a way that's different from the usual competitive. I mean, really was one of the first sort of spiritual intentional communities that were created. And I remember there were stories about how people lived, I mean, close to the land, but in a very, very spiritual sense, and really honoring sort of the connection we have to the earth and to the spirit of the earth. And then being able to grow like melon-sized strawberries and these giant fruits and vegetables and things that or at least very healthy and unusual for that part of Scotland. Is that the case, or were those just kind of wild? Well, there were said to be, I'm not about melon-sized strawberries, but there were 40-pound cabbages said to be, although by all accounts they were inedible. They were pretty tough. But yes, when they had the experts from the Soil Association, which is the British organization that oversees organic agriculture, when they came, they said, we cannot account for the abundance of these plants and vegetables by just the nature of the soil. The soil is so sandy. This is such a windswept area. There had to be a factor X. And from the Findhorn point of view, that came from attunement to the spiritual forces within and behind nature, whether you call them nature spirits or devas or whatever. So it was based on a mystical and spiritual nature. But the cliche at Findhorn is it moved from growing vegetables to growing human beings, and certainly it was a time of when I was there was an enormous a palpable sense of love. And when you entered Findhorn in those days, say in 1976, it was as if you entered through a membrane where the vibration of love was stepped up about 4 or 5% from where it was in the outside world. So it was a very beautiful feeling of community. And in fact, I'm still in touch today with many of the friends that I made back in my 20s there. I think I narrate a moment in the book when I arrive at Findhorn in a snowstorm on New Year's Eve, and I walk through the door, and I have this immediate sense, but I know half these people, even though there was only one person in the room I'd ever met before. And indeed, here we are, what is this, how many years later, 40 years later, I'm still in touch with many of them, and they're all over the world, and they're all going to be lifelong friends.
Wonderful, wonderful. So what would you say of the time that you spent, the 3 years that you spent there, what do you think changed about yourself the most from when you arrived to when you left?
I think for me it was a strong experience of personal healing. It had been a lonely journey since I sort of left graduate school at the age of 21, and I didn't get to Findhorn until I was 26, 27. So I've been on a long, solitary journey, you know, hitchhiking to Machu Picchu, many privations and experiences, as well as beautiful experiences along the way, being part of the West Coast counterculture in the Bay Area in the mid-70s too. But it had been a rather isolated journey. So I would say when coming to Findhorn, it gave me that sense of family, of community. It was healing, a sense of placement with the world, a sense of meeting hundreds of other people from multiple different backgrounds and ages who shared my values and interests. And so,
that's an important thing, community, and it's so interesting because I'm seeing just the idea of community and the concept of community becoming more and more intertwined in the spiritual dialogue these days. That I know for myself personally, in the last couple of years, it's been rekindled. But that it kind of, this idea of community, you know, was very much sort of in vogue in the 60s and 70s, and then kind of fell out of favor, I guess, as just a movement or an idea, and now it seems like it's being revived again. Do you feel that?
I do feel that we need it, yeah. I feel like, you know, of course, nobody anticipated in the 70s that we were going to go into an era of turbo-capitalism and intense focus on individual wealth creation and me, and all of that. But I think we're coming to the point now where we realize we have to operate cooperatively to deal with global environmental issues and so on. And also, well, you know, what's the point of individual wealth without the sense of well-being that comes from family, community, feeling embedded in the world and welcomed in the world?
Absolutely, absolutely. All right, believe it or not, time to take our next break. So when we come back, let's talk about how the Open Center got started and where that all came from, okay? All right, wonderful. So everybody, please stay tuned. You're listening to the Conscious Consultant Hour, Awakening Humanity. We're talking with Open Center co-founder Ralph White and author of the book, The Jeweled Highway, and we'll be right back.